Next up, the F-16C that crashed at March Air Force Base into the warehouse off to the right side of runway 14 in Riverside on March 16th, about 3:45 p.m. The pilot safely ejected, yet 13 people were injured working in the warehouse where the aircraft ended up. The aircraft is owned by the 114th Fighter Wing out of South Dakota Air National Guard base, the Lobos, but it was flown by a California Air National Guard pilot from the 144th Fighter Wing. Now, one thing I'm confused about is here in the California Air National Guard, those folks flying the Homeland Security mission, I thought they were all converted to the F-15 aircraft, and yet here we're still flying the F-16 aircraft. So if anybody has any information on that, I'd like to know what the deal is. The Air Force at this time is saying that the aircraft suffered from hydraulic failure, forcing the pilot to eject. Now let's talk a little bit about F-16 systems. I love to talk about the F-16. That's one of my favorite aircraft in the Air Force inventory, and the aircraft I wanted to fly upon completion of Air Force pilot training in 1989. The F-16 has it's a single-seat, single-engine fighter, yet has two hydraulic systems for redundancy to power the flight controls and other operations of the aircraft, hydraulic system A and hydraulic system B, which are both powered by hydraulic pumps off of the single engine. Backing up the single engine on the F-16 is an EPU, emergency power unit, not an APU, not an auxiliary power unit, but an EPU. This EPU is fueled by hydrazine. That's basically rocket fuel. There's 25 liters or 6.7 gallons of hydrazine in a stainless steel tank that powers the EPU. This hydrazine is able to create a chemical reaction very quickly when it's passed over a iridium catalyst. That allows the hydrazine to heat up nearly instantly and fire up the emergency power unit in 2 seconds. Why is it so critical that the F-16 have a EPU fire up so quickly? The F-16 is the nation's first fly-by-wire fighter aircraft. Now let's stop right there for a second and clear up some misconceptions about fly-by-wire. When we're talking about these updates about fly-by-wire fighter aircraft versus fly-by-wire transport aircraft, and we get into the discussion about stability and inherent stability, apples and oranges. The F-16 first generation fly-by-wire aircraft needs the computerized control system to maintain its stability. It is, in fact, an inherently unstable design and requires fly-by-wire to maintain its stability. In transport category aircraft, just because a transport category airliner type aircraft is fly-by-wire does not mean it is necessarily It does not mean at all that it is unstable. Fly-by-wire is used in transport category aircraft primarily to save weight. It also allows them to add computer enhancements into the control system and various protections to protect low-time pilots from crashing the airplane. Back to the EPU and the F-16 and the hydrazine. This presents a special problem for first responders in the event of an F-16 crash and is largely responsible for the 13 injuries from the warehouse workers in this crash. Though this aircraft was loaded with ordnance, that's ammunition for the 20mm cannon plus 2 missiles on the wingtips, it was the hydrazine that represented the larger problem to folks on the ground once this aircraft crashed. Hydrazine is a colorless fluid, but it has the smell of ammonia, and hydrazine is much more dangerous in its liquid form than it is in its burn form. The hydrazine used in the F-16 is H70, or a mixture of 70% hydrazine, 30% water. The 25 liters or 6.7 gallons of hydrazine on board the F-16 gives you a runtime, a pure runtime, if you are only operating the aircraft with the EPU, of about 10 to 15 minutes. Not only does the EPU provide hydraulic power for the flight controls, that allows you to conceivably dead stick an F-16, it also and instantaneously provides power for the fly-by-wire flight control system, in other words, the electrical system. The pilot was able to eject safely because of the ACES-2 ejection system. It looks like it was a very low altitude ejection. The ACES-2 seat is rated as a 0-0 seat. That is, you can safely eject from the aircraft at 0 altitude, 0 feet of altitude, and 0 knots of airspeed. The ACES-2 ejection seat is also equipped with gyro-stabilized rocket, variable thrust rocket system. So if you are off at an odd angle, the ejection seat will eject you out of the aircraft and quickly get you headed away from the ground, vertically away from the ground, such that you could be in a situation as bad as 150 feet above the ground, fully inverted, and that ejection seat can recover you out of that aircraft. It's a very violent ejection. It hurts. Here's what it looks like. Here's a couple of flight test dummies going for a ride at the Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico test track at 0 altitude and a certain amount of forward velocity, getting the classic one swing in the chute and you're down. The only ejection seat aircraft I've flown is the T-37 and T-38, and fortunately I've never had to take this ride. A lot of folks have speculated that because the aircraft did not burn once it hit the warehouse, they were wondering if the pilot had run the aircraft out of fuel. Well, if we find out any more information about that, we'll let you know on a future update. The March Air Force Base Ordnance Disposal Team was able to extract carefully the 2 missiles from the wreckage and destroy them on 17 May at the Ben Clark Training Center, just 2 miles from the crash site. This is the first major accident for the Air Force this year, and they'll be doing their own accident investigation as they always do. And the Air Force is still investigating the 11 accidents they had in 2018. More aviation updates coming in hot. See you here.